Okay, this first stitch that we're going to take a look at is the running stitch. And so we're going to start with 2 layers of fabric, and we're going to place them right sides together, so that our long edge is even. And then I have marked where I'm going to put my stitches. That's not strictly speaking necessary, but if you're wanting to keep your stitches even, it's really, really helpful. It also helps keep them in a straight line, so that you have an even seam allowance, or distance from the edge of your fabric. So I think it's worth the extra bit of time. So the running stitch is going to be a little bit of a longer stitch. So I've marked my stitches 1/4 inch apart. And then I've made my seam allowances, or my seam allowance 5/8 of an inch. So my marks are 5/8 of an inch from that edge. So to do the running stitch, we're just going to go over and under and over and under through the fabric. So I'm going to start, and go down through the fabric through my first hole. And then I'm going to kind of bend my fabric back so that my needle can come back up through the fabric, on my next mark. And I'm going to pull through and form that first stitch. Then I'm going to come down through the next hole and come up through the next and pull. And you can form one stitch at a time if that is what is most comfortable for controlling controlling the fabric and the needle as you're learning. But as you get more comfortable, it goes a lot faster if you're comfortable loading more than one stitch onto your needle at a time. So I've gone down through the fabric in one mark, up through the fabric in the next, down and then up. And then I'm going to pull through. And you want to make sure that as you pull, if you pull too hard, your fabric will start to scrunch. You don't necessarily want that. So we're going to give it just enough tension to pull our stitches so they're taut, but not so that they start to pucker. And you'll notice as I go back and forth through the fabric, that I am actually going to gather the fabric along my needle. It just allows me to get more stitches onto my needle, at one time before I have to stop and pull through. And just speeds up the running stitch a little bit. But then as I pull that thread through, I make sure that the fabric goes back to being nice and smooth and flat, and that my stitches are tight and smooth, but not gathering. I also want to watch out for my fabric is trying to shift a little bit, so my edges aren't even. You want to kind of help control that and hold your layers together, so that they don't shift. If it's hard to keep track of that while you're sewing, especially as you're learning the stitch, you can use pins, to hold the fabric layers together, so that they don't shift on you. Okay, as I'm coming to the end, I'm going to go down through my fabric, and then this last one I don't really have enough room for a whole other stitch, so I'm just going to come up and make a fairly short running stitch. And then really I'm just going to tie a knot. So I'm going to bring my needle down next to where the thread is coming out from the fabric, and I'm going to wrap the thread around my needle a couple times, and then I'm going to hold that in place with my finger and pull my thread through. And then I have a nice thick knot that stays right there at the edge of the fabric to secure my stitches, and I can trim off, and I have a running stitch.